What is going on, everybody? It is Monday night, just after week 12 fantasy football. And you already know what's coming at you right now. Every Monday night after the Monday night game, I go ahead and I address some things I got right, some things I got wrong in my fantasy football analysis. And, the reason that it's live every week, guys, is because I think that it's best that I do it live to show you guys the raw reaction right after the Monday night game, because that's the last game of the week, and it's there to give you guys the most honest reaction that I could possibly give after the Monday night game and after the week is over and I have time to really think about the moves that were made and the calls that were made as well. So as usual, going through what I got right and what I got wrong in the Week 12 fantasy football, guys. So if you appreciate this segment, guys, the best way to support me is to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So let's go ahead and just get right into it right now. So I want to start out with something that for those of you who have been with my channel for the majority of the season, you know that every Monday I come out with buy low trade target videos. And I will be honest with you, we have been wildly successful on this channel as far as getting the buy low candidates right. So it's, something that I'm pretty proud of is the guys that we've called buy lows. And a lot of them, like, when you go back there at this time of the year, it's hard to, get it with a fresh perspective because it's old, right? And it's like, when I was telling people to trade for A.J. Brown after week 2, a lot of people were like, yeah. Like, you look back on that and you're like, no duh. Like, who doesn't want A.J. Brown? And it's like, well, at the time, there was a lot of people who were calling for Devonta Smith over A.J. Brown. And if you should trade A.J. Brown for him straight up. And one of these guys, I think we're not there yet, but we're about to be there. And it's Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson, I called a buy low trade target. Actually, he's been in several of my buy low videos this year. For the first time I called him a buy low, I want to say it was like after week 8 or something like that, week 8 or week 9. And he appeared on it several more times throughout the rest of the season. And he was on it a couple of weeks ago. I think he was on it. If not, I think it was last week. Yeah. And I said that, listen, we're talking about a guy who is a high upside rookie here. And even though there wasn't much hope for him at the time, I kept saying to the audience, I said, when we have the opportunity to trade for a very high value rookie running back who is one of the best running back prospects we had seen in like a decade. I mean, Bijan Robinson was the best running back prospect I had ever seen since Saquon Barkley. I was in love with the guy. I mean, he's a great player. And I said, if we've got a chance to trade low for him, absolutely do it. Because at the time, like, there wasn't much hope for the guy. After, several weeks of Tyler Algier and him splitting backfield duties and, him getting pulled out of the game for God knows what reason, because he's so clearly their best back. And it's understandable why a lot of people had issues with Bijan Robinson. Last week, heading into week 12, I was discussing Bijan Robinson on several occasions, and I was saying, this is a guy that I'm really interested in. And it kept getting more interesting to me throughout the week because I was like reading things and, things were coming to my attention. And it was like, this guy is, according to the coaching staff, going to get a massive workload this week. And that was the first thing that was like, okay, it's coming for me personally, because I was like, if you look the week before Atlanta's bye week, which their bye week was in week 11, the first week before their bye week, it was like he had 20 plus opportunities. And it was like, okay, like if we can keep this rolling, that'd be great. And then when you see a report he's going to get a heavy workload, it's like, oh, let's go. So I started raising on the guy throughout the week. And it turned into a situation where I was like, this guy's he's going to be a stud this week. And he got higher and higher in my rankings to the point where he was a top 10 back. I hope that you bought him. I really do, because this guy at this point, man, like this is a great, great fantasy asset to have for the playoffs. A rookie running back who has been capped all season, and it's like, you know, whenever you have a rookie who is that good and doesn't get the touches he deserves for the beginning part of the season, and really for the majority of the season, you've got what I like to call a pent up frustration effect. And it's like, this guy has been frustrated. He hasn't been getting the workload, and now he's finally getting it. Bijan Robinson is here to stay. I'm telling you guys. And his schedule is really not that bad. And if you have not watched my running back rankings for the playoffs yet, I would say go watch it after this live stream. You'll see how highly I have Bijan Robinson ranked because I believe this guy is here to stay. Gonna pause really quick because I see you got a super chat from Haven, and I appreciate the super chat. Just whooped ass with CJ Stroud, Josh Downs, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery, Rashad White, and Cole Kmet. I hated that I gave up Bijan. Yeah, that's fantastic to get a win like that. And I mean, from what I can see, you've got lots of upside at the running back position and obviously at the quarterback position as well. So let's go on that. I share the excitement on that because, man, you guys don't. Like, I hope you understand. I hope I do a good job of conveying this. When you guys win, I win because I love watching my audience win. That's what makes me honestly the most happy is watching you guys win. It's fun for me because I've been playing fantasy football for over a decade. And so when I watch my audience do well, that's what I want is for everyone who watches me to get a fantasy championship. So, that's awesome to hear. Obviously, giving up Bijan is tough to swallow right now. But again, hindsight's always 2020. And Bijan Robinson's a guy that I was telling people to sell for certain deals. But, in a lot of situations, he was a good buy low candidate at a lot of times this year. So let's go, Haven. Let's get you another dub next week. And again, I appreciate the super chat. And guys, the super chats not only get your questions answered immediately, but it also does help support me, help support the channel. I've got no corporate backing, so I rely on you guys for the support. So it is always greatly appreciated. But even if you don't donate, I love you guys. Appreciate y'all being in here. This is what I got right and what I got wrong. So here's what thing I got wrong. And every week on this, I have to do defense-related stuff because defense is such a big part of what I'm building here at Football Fanalysts Network. And one of the reasons it's such a big part of it is because there's no other fantasy football YouTubers are doing it once a week, rankings top 12 like I am. And I think it's a disservice to the community. I really do. I think it helps you guys get the most out of your lineup every week. So I will continue to do the defense videos every single week during the season of fantasy football. And also during the offseason, I'll be giving defense updates as well. But, what's really interesting about, obviously this defense-related stuff is, just because I do defenses, I'm not claiming that I'm just this know-it-all expert on defenses. Like, that's not true. I would never, claim that I'm this perfect know-it-all defensive guy. Although I do love the game of football, I watch both sides of it because I just love football. I obviously get things wrong on the defensive side of the ball. And it actually really stings a little bit more, to be honest with you guys, when I get the defensive side of the ball wrong. I think that, one of the things that I really got wrong this week was Kansas City's defense. And I've seen a lot of comments directed at me about Kansas City's defense. And I want to go through what Kansas City did. So if you were not able to watch the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday, the Raiders lost by several touchdowns. However, the Chiefs defense bombed. They bombed. Like, had 2 to 1 fantasy point depending on your format. It was a bad week for defense for Kansas City. Bad. And I should have seen this coming, and I shouldn't have ranked them as high since here's something I always say on this channel. Especially when it relates to the kicker position, I always say that divisional matchups are different. divisional matchups in the NFL, what we need to understand about divisional matchups is that these teams that play each other in division, they see each other twice a year. So they have more familiarity. A team like Green Bay is going to understand Detroit way more than they'll understand Baltimore, for example. Detroit just lost to the Packers because the Packers, vice versa, know their tendencies more than they would against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. And that's why Baltimore crushed Detroit. I think that ultimately, when it comes down to Kansas City's defense for the long term, I've been asked a lot today about what my outlook for the Kansas City Chiefs defense is for the rest of the season. And I know that it's very easy to, it's very easy to look at that game and say, this is a problem. I mean, they couldn't do it against the Raiders offense. And if it were not a divisional game, like if the Chiefs just did that performance against the Carolina Panthers, I would say abort ship. Like abort the Kansas City Chiefs defense. But the reality is, man, like it's not the same thing. It's not. First of all, the Raiders have way more talent than the Panthers do. Second of all, it's not in division. So they don't know the Panthers as well as the Raiders know the Chiefs. And the Raiders always have a lot of, at the very least, fight against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I don't really look at this too harshly on the Chiefs defense. It doesn't take away from the fact that they have a very good playoff schedule. And also, in addition to that, this game was in Las Vegas. Like, I said this earlier today. I said, what if this game was in Kansas City? If it was in Arrowhead, I doubt that they would have maybe as much success, but for sure, I don't think they would have played a clean football game. They played a clean football game in Las Vegas. When it's in Arrowhead during the playoffs, by the way, I don't see them playing a clean football game in Arrowhead. So I'm not really worried about Kansas City's defense long term. We got to look at it for what it was. It was when you look at their whole season, it was a blemish on their resume. That's the best way you can look at this. It was a blemish on their otherwise excellent defensive resume this season. And again, I think the reason for it is because it was a divisional matchup in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas has had a lot more attitude and a lot more physicality and a lot more energy without Josh McDaniels. So I think that once we get to, I think it's week 16 or 17, when the Chiefs play Vegas and they host them this time, I think we're seeing a different outcome. So I'm ultimately not worried about the Chiefs long term, but without a doubt, like, I should have seen this one coming more in week 12. Of course, we stay on defense here. And I did make some really good calls this weekend. So San Francisco and Miami were two calls I was confident about. Now, Miami was looked at as a defense that was like, that's a dunk. That's a slam dunk. Like, you're so smart, Ryan. You know what I mean? Like, that was not a brainiac call that I just made when it comes to the Miami Dolphins defense. Like, they played the New York Jets with Tim Boyle. Even if Tim Boyle is much better than Zach Wilson by like 50%, you're not going to see 100% Tim Boyle, in his first action as a starter. That's just not going to happen. And it didn't happen. That's exactly what did not happen. So I'm not exactly, saying that Miami's defense, like, I was just the only one in the fantasy community who knew this one. And, that was that. But San Francisco's defense was a question for some people going against Seattle, also in a divisional matchup. And I was like, man, you got to smash play them. And in addition, Denver's defense as well versus the Cleveland Browns. Those two defenses, to me, have possibly the highest trajectories in the NFL as far as fantasy football defenses go at this moment in time. I'm not saying that they have the highest ceiling. I'm not saying that they have the highest ceiling, and I'm not saying that they have the highest potential. That's not what I'm saying about either one of these defenses. San Francisco's maybe, Denver, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that when it comes to, you think of fantasy football as like a graph, right? Like, Denver's defense is going like this. San Francisco's defense is going like this. If you look at Seattle's defense, for example, they're going like this. Like they're dropping. So I think that ultimately, when it comes to defenses, it's so week to week. And that's why I do defense rankings every single week on this channel. Because after playing fantasy football for over a decade at this point, I've realized that fantasy football is like, you got to split it up into 4 quarters, honestly, to get the most accurate information. I think it's valuable to be able to split it up, because think of somebody like Zach Moss, right? Zach Moss had a great fantasy season the first 8 weeks. He's now, like, aside from week 12, irrelevant in the last 4. Look at somebody like, look at a defense like Seattle's. Seattle's defense, I thought, for the first several weeks of the season, was going to be a great defense. Same with Houston's defense. And maybe both of those defenses come back, but right now, they're not playing well, and I can't endorse my audience to play them. Denver's defense is the perfect example of this, because giving up 70 points to Miami, I genuinely thought at the time, I was like, there's no way I could tell my audience to play this defense again. How could I? We're there, because what I always make sure I like to do is I like to make sure it's easy for me, because I love watching football, but I always make sure to keep up with every team to see what the trends are. And Denver's defense has been trending up for several weeks now, because they got rid of a lot of those old veteran guys that gave Sean Payton and Vance Joseph the middle finger during that 70-point blowout. So Denver's defense, I have a lot of confidence in moving forward, actually. Same with San Francisco's. Here's something that really stings. And like this one, I'm not even going to lie. This is the ultimate knife to my heart and twist to my heart. I might cry. I'm not going to cry, but I'll be honest here. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been one of my favorite wide receivers in a long time. I have been shouting about Jackson Smith-Njigba for honestly years now. I mean, this guy's from Dallas, Texas, and Ohio State. He was the best, in my opinion, between Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr. One of the most elite wide receiving rooms in college football history, and I think he was the best. And I had such high expectations for him this year. And I still have high expectations for this particular player. And you may have seen it on Thanksgiving night. He made one of the catches of the year. I mean, total body control, one-hand grab down the sidelines. It was outrageous what he was able to do with that. I still love the player, and I still think that moving forward, great dynasty fantasy football wide receiver. And next year, I'll be very interested in him in redraft leagues. But I got to be honest, I was wrong about him being a league winner. I don't see it. I don't see it anymore. You have no idea how much that hurts to say. I love the player. This guy has been a darling of mine forever. But I have to look at reality here. This guy is on an offense where he is currently fluctuating between the wide receiver 3 and the wide receiver 2 in targets per game. DK Metcalf is the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense. He's also dealing with a quarterback that is totally suboptimal. Geno Smith is not good. And honestly, if he is their quarterback next year, I'll be livid, honestly. Not only will I be livid, but Pete Carroll should be ashamed of himself. He needs to make a move at quarterback, because the talent they've got on this team, Geno Smith is not cutting it. And for Jackson Smith-Njigba, for fantasy football purposes, Geno Smith is one of the main reasons why I can't tell my audience anymore that Jackson Smith-Njigba has league-winning upside. He doesn't. If we're looking at rookies who have league-winning upside, we're looking at guys like Tank Dell. We're looking at guys like Puka Nacua. We're looking at guys like Jaden Reed. Jackson Smith-Njigba is just simply not in that category. It hurts me so bad to say it, guys, but I have to be honest here. This is one of the most brutally hard things to to say because I love the player, but honesty and transparency is what matters the most to me when it comes to speaking with my audience and just living my life. But like when it comes to this segment, it's all about transparency. And I called Jackson Smith-Njigba a league-winning player this year before the season and during the season. Not only has it not panned out that way, but I don't see it happening. He's just in an offense that does not have enough upside via the quarterback play. So, guys, this is what I got right and what I got wrong in Week 12 fantasy football, guys. I am one of the only fantasy football YouTubers who does a segment dedicated to this type of video right here. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. And if you appreciate this type of segment, just please go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's get back into it. So, a player that I've really been big on all season as well, speaking of Jackson Smith-Njigba, Isaiah Pacheco is a guy that I've been big on for a long time. I was big on him before the season. I said that this is the type of guy that has a lot of, upside from the offense that he's on and a lot of upside from the running, from the offensive line that he runs behind. This guy is a legit player because he's the number 2 weapon in this offense. And several weeks ago, again, much like Bijan Robinson, was a buy low trade target. And it was interesting. He kind of had like a dry spell for a little bit where he really wasn't doing much. And I had a lot of people asking me, like, do I trade him away for Tony Pollard right now or something? And it's like, no, I wouldn't do that, but I can understand where people are coming from. But my ultimate goal was to show as many people as I possibly could that this guy has upside that go past what we've seen of late. Now, the perfect example for it was what he did versus the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 11. In Week 11 versus Philadelphia, Isaiah Pacheco didn't have a touchdown, and he was playing one of the best run defenses in the National Football League. He ran the ball 19 times for 89 yards. Now, that's not like some astounding week, but that's a good week. That's a really good week. He just didn't find the end zone. And last week, in Week 12, the dude goes off. He freaking goes off. 2 touchdown performance against the Raiders. And all of a sudden, he's back in the conversation for a top 10 top 10 running back in fantasy football. Isaiah Pacheco, it's been there all along for him. It really has. They don't mess around with other running backs anymore. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that experiment's over. Long gone. Jerick McKinnon, dude hasn't been able to stay healthy and just hasn't been used that much. Isaiah Pacheco is not only the running back leader in this offense, but he is also their second best weapon. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but just picture this really quick. If I'm talking about the second best weapon in Miami's offense, you're thinking Raheem Mostert or Jalen Waddle. Both of those guys have tremendous fantasy football upside. Tremendous amounts. Raheem Mostert's the running back 2 in fantasy football right now, right? So in an offense like that, you want the number 2 option over the New England Patriots, the New York Giants, the Carolina Panthers, number 1 weapon, right? So the weapon number 2 in the Kansas City Chiefs offense, bottom line, you want that player in fantasy football because he's going to have weeks like Isaiah Pacheco just had in fantasy football. Ham, I see I got another super chat. I'm sorry, Haven. See, I got another super chat from you. I appreciate it. Sorry, I know this isn't the topic, but I'm curious of your opinion. I'm thinking I'll start Stroud, Scary Terry, Cortland Sutton, David Montgomery, Pacheco, Trey McBride, and A.J. Dillon at flex next week. Okay, so, I got to be honest here. I don't love your wide receiver core, to be honest. And I don't know if you have passed your trade deadline or not. If you have not passed your trade deadline, what I would do personally is I would take one of those running backs and try to upgrade a wide receiver. You've got plenty of them. You're in a situation where you're in a surplus at running back, and it's always good to be in a surplus at a certain position. I'm fully on board with that. But these wide receivers in particular, I just don't think there's much of a ceiling there as there could be. And you're going to have to bench one of these running backs anyways. So I would try to trade one of your running backs away personally. Now, as far as your lineup goes this week, I think that the only change I would make is A.J. Dillon I don't believe in as a great starting option. I really don't. I think that Rachaad White, he would be a better starting option. I want to make sure they're not on bye week before I tell you that. I'm going through all my rankings tonight, guys. No, they're not on bye week. They're playing against the Panthers. I think that Rachaad White is a better start personally than A.J. Dillon is this week. So that's the change I would make personally. If you can't trade right now, like you're good at running back. Like the running back surplus that you have is going to put you in good position. But yeah, at the flex position, I would make the change personally to go with Rachaad White because he is playing the Carolina Panthers. That's like you don't get a better matchup for a running back. I said it in regards to Derrick Henry last week. It's like Derrick Henry is in a situation where if he screws up against Carolina, like he's donezo. He's donezo for the year. And he played well. Rachaad White definitely going to have a good game against Carolina. I would be shocked if otherwise. I would absolutely start Rachaad White this week over A.J. Dillon. But yeah, again, I appreciate the super chat from you. So the last thing that I got wrong, or the last thing we're covering tonight. By the way, it's live, guys, because also, yes, I do want to be transparent and have raw takes for you guys, but it's also live because I want you guys to be able to chime in and put in what I got right and what I got wrong. I want everybody to have a voice in my community that I'm building at Football Fanalysts Network. So please feel free to comment down below what I got right, what I got wrong, and what you saw from my fantasy football analysis. Open to everything from you guys. Love you guys being in here. So, yeah, one of the things I got wrong is this is also a little bit of a gut punch to me as well. And actually, it's interesting, like, the writing was on the wall for this one long ago. I actually just forgot to kind of discuss it in this segment for weeks and weeks. It's obvious to everybody at this point, and I know that tonight's not exactly like the best night to say this, but Justin Fields, I was calling for the guy's breakout all offseason long. I was saying that the breakout is imminent, and this guy is like, we all know that Justin Fields can give you a 40-point game when he's on. And he still can do that. Like, I'm not saying that that's where I went wrong. Where I went wrong, it was telling people this guy's having a Jalen Hurts type of season this year. I don't know what I was thinking. I got to be honest here. I think that when I look back on it, and this is, again, why I love doing this live, because you guys are actually seeing me process my thoughts on this one. I think that where I went with Justin Fields in the offseason was looking at a guy who was clearly a super athlete at the quarterback position, has more rushing upside than Jalen Hurts. Arguably more than Lamar Jackson at this point in his career. And I was thinking to myself, if he can find consistency, this guy is going off and winning people all kinds of leagues who have him. And that's what we were ultimately looking for from him, was consistency at the position and consistently scoring us 20 to 25 points at the lowest, 40 to 45 at the highest. I thought that was on the table, and I thought that was not only on the table, I thought that was going to be his season. I should have seen this one from a mile away. Honestly, I had way too much optimism for the Chicago Bears offense, their offensive play calling, and their team organization as a whole. I had way too much upside. Chicago Bears have not had not only a franchise quarterback since I've been alive and watching the Bears. Like, Jay Cutler was the closest thing that came to that. And Jay Cutler, while extremely talented, his arm was honestly, like, all kidding aside, Jay Cutler had one of the best arms I've ever seen. But it's it's a situation where he was never a franchise guy who was going to win you a lot of games. The Bears really have never had a true franchise quarterback. And not that I was saying that Justin Fields was going to be a franchise quarterback, but I figured that with another season under his belt, another offseason under his belt, improvements that he made last season in the back half of last season, I was thinking, man, we've got a league winner on our hands. He's got the upside, and I'm not going to put it past him to have a 40-point game in your fantasy playoffs. I'm not saying don't start Justin Fields. Obviously, he got the win tonight, made the big throw there at the end if you watch the Monday night game. But, it's a hard situation because I said that this guy was going to have a Jalen Hurts type of season. I was wildly off base on that. He looks very similar to what he did last year, and I don't think he gets a lot of help. I don't think it's all his fault, but at the same time, it's like we're probably not going to see another year of Justin Fields starting in Chicago. That's my guess at the moment. So that's what I got wrong. All right, guys. So that was what I got right and what I got wrong for Week 12 fantasy football. I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple of questions before I sign off for the night. Tomorrow, just a heads up, we've got the wide receiver rankings for Week 13 fantasy football and the defense rankings for Week 13 fantasy football. So make sure to stay tuned for those videos. And if you appreciate the segment, please go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support. All right, so let's go into a couple of questions really quick before I sign off. Ham, you were actually up at the top. Would you rather have Tank Dell and Jefferson or Amon-Ra and Devonta Smith? I would be trading Amon-Ra's side away. I'm in first and could afford not having Jefferson for the next week. Love the streams. Well, I appreciate you being here, first of all. I see where you're coming from on this one. I really do. Like, you're trading for a big name player. And I myself have said on this channel for weeks now, and not just for weeks, I've been saying it for years. I just understand that the channel has grown quite a bit over the season. And what I've been saying when it comes to the fantasy football playoffs, you want to get a player who puts you over the top to win you a fantasy championship. I understand where you're getting at here. Now, what's also important to remember when you're trying to do a move like that is to remember what you already have and make sure to not overlook that. So when I see a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown on your team, first of all, this guy is a top 5, if not top 7 wide receiver in fantasy for the rest of the season, including the playoffs. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I've got no issues when it comes to him. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, we all love him too. Like, he's a great player. Who would not love Justin Jefferson based on what he's done? Not only last season, but this season before he got hurt, and really ever since he's been in the league. What I worry about here is that when it comes to Justin Jefferson, I said this like over a month ago at this point. And I'm not saying this is going to turn out to be right, but what I said over a month ago was that I'm worried that Justin Jefferson may not come back. When I saw his injury and when I saw how he reacted, I was like, that was not a hamstring pull. Like, that was a legit significant hamstring injury. And it's held him out for a long time. Now, there has been, obviously, they opened up his practice window. He's been practicing. So they're going to have to make a decision on this guy soon. So what I do believe will happen is he ultimately will return after the bye week that they have in week 13. I do ultimately believe that's what's going to happen. But I said this, remember what I said weeks ago about Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison had been killing it with Kirk Cousins. Without Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison was killing it. And I said that as good as this guy has been, and as much as I like him as a player, he's about to see a drop off in production. There's just no question. You go from Kirk Cousins, who's averaging 300 to 400 passing yards per game. You go from that to Josh Dobbs, who, yes, is a good backup quarterback in this league. This guy doesn't clear 300 passing yards. He can't do it. He's a backup quarterback. You go from that to that, there's a significant ceiling drop. So, and that's exactly what has happened with Jordan Addison. Now, obviously, Justin Jefferson is the better player. There's no question about that. But the problem that I have with it is that with the quarterback deficiency that he is going to have when he comes back, and with that much time missing, how hard are they going to use him? I really don't see much benefit trading away Amon-Ra St. Brown. I really don't. And I get it. You're in a good position. You're in a situation where you're first place and you can, put yourself at the top. I get the reason. But this is a move I would make if my best wide receiver was Mike Evans or Puka Nacua. This is not a decision I would make with my wide receiver one being Amon-Ra St. Brown, because the reality is we know that he has not quite the ceiling of Justin Jefferson, but maybe 5 points less, and the floor is the same. So, yeah, this one doesn't make a ton of sense to me, to be honest with you. I would stick with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Wyatt, what's going on, my man? I appreciate the super chat. Josh Jacobs or DJ Moore? For DJ Moore, I'm sorry. Need someone for bye. So Josh Jacobs obviously coming off a massive performance in week 12 against the Chiefs of all teams. I think that when you stack it up, there's a lot of people. Honestly, the fantasy community that I've seen on my channel and from throughout the fantasy community is that there's a lot of us who are split right now on Josh Jacobs. It's actually really interesting to watch. Because Josh Jacobs is somebody that I think all of us acknowledge that he's a great player in fantasy and he's got potential to give big games. Like, nobody's debating that, I don't think. Now, what I have said and what my problems are with Josh Jacobs is that he's on an offense that just simply is not powered by a great quarterback. And so there's deficiencies there. And he's averaging like barely 3 yards per carry, guys. This guy is not some hyper-efficient running back. He relies on big plays, and that's exactly what just happened in this previous week, is that he got a big play against Kansas City. Now, I said this in my fantasy football playoff running back rankings video I did today. And I said, listen, you can't take away the big plays from Josh Jacobs because he can do them. Like, he's not just a one-trick pony. Every once in a while, every 4 games, he gets a big play, and that's it. Like, Josh Jacobs can break off for a big run like that. Any play, he can break off a big run. So, I'm not taking that away from him. DJ Moore, to me, I've said this over the weeks with him, with Justin Fields there, his upside is back. And we all know what he did. And I think it was week 4 or 5 this season. Like 50 points. And I'm not saying that's going to happen again. I'm not saying it's going to happen again. I think it's highly unlikely it does happen again. But 30-point games are not out of the question for DJ Moore, much like they're not for Josh Jacobs. So I'll be honest here. This one is going to come down largely to who you've got at the running back position and at the wide receiver position. Because if you're sitting pretty at running back and you've got Josh Jacobs in addition to Isaiah Pacheco and in addition to, Bijan Robinson or Jonathan Taylor, and then you've also got a running back 4 who's like a Rachaad White or maybe a Brian Robinson. Yeah, I would do this move for sure. And I actually might ask for a little bit more because coming off a big week, I think Josh Jacobs can yield you a greater return. Running back 4 right now in fantasy football. I think the dude has lots of value. Like I said, the community is split. There's a large part of the community who still loves Josh Jacobs. And I love the player, not denying that. I just think there's deficiencies there that we will see, especially come the fantasy playoffs. And then on the other hand, if you're in a situation where you've got wide receivers like, if you've got wide receivers like CeeDee Lamb and Mike Evans and Cortland Sutton and, Tank Dell, it's like you're pretty good at wide receivers, so I don't think that's necessary. But just based on what you're saying right now about needing someone for the bye week, I'm assuming that you're in a position where you need a wide receiver, so more than a running back. So I would take this trade. What I would advise you to do personally, man, is I would personally go try to get more for Josh Jacobs because I think he can yield you that after the performance he just got. I just don't want you to sell yourself short. But again, I appreciate the super chat. Twisted Folk, what's going on? I appreciate the super chat. Full PPR. Drop Thielen for Sutton or Hollywood. Thanks. Yeah, I kind of figured I'd get some of these Thielen questions. So another bonus, actually, for what I got wrong, Adam Thielen. My take on Adam Thielen this week was dog. It was awful. That was one of my worst takes of the week, actually. It was an embarrassment. I mean, complete embarrassment. And what's funny about it is, like, I've been saying this for weeks now, and I said it literally like an hour before game time. I said it, I was like, I'm worried at some point that this ceiling that we've seen from Adam Thielen, it's going to be game over because this offense sucks. This team sucks. Everything sucks in Carolina. I was like, I think I'm worried about this one. So it's actually ironic that I called this one and I simultaneously told my audience to start him, and I apologize for that because I know that he crushed a lot of people this week, and that is brutal. So when I look at it's a tough one, honestly, because, again, I always think back to what I always say. And I know that this time of the year it's complicated, so I'll get into it in a minute. But what I always want everybody to ask themselves, before you drop a player, always ask yourself, is this player going to be picked up right away off the waiver wire? And if the answer you think is yes, that player has trade value. Even if you're only getting fab, you want to take the fab because you want to get something rather than nothing, right? So, and like I said, I know it's complicated this time of the year because a lot of people have had their fantasy trade deadline passed. So if you're in that situation where your trade deadline is passed, obviously you've got to make a decision here. Now, the good thing about Cortland Sutton is not exactly coming off a great week. So I don't think he's going to be exactly some prize commodity, especially since he had been sitting on your waiver wire for several weeks while he was having good performances. I don't think you need to make this decision right away with Thielen. Now, if the shoe's on the other foot and you've got Marquise Brown, he had a better week this week, and he's got more perceived upside than Cortland Sutton does. So I think that ultimately, I'll be honest here, I will stick with Thielen for now because I want to see what happens in a week. And again, if you could trade Thielen, I would actually do that. I would trade Thielen for a wide receiver 2, on the low end, or a running back 2 on the low end, and just ride that. And then, drop someone else to pick him up. Because I think that ultimately he has some upside because of the fact that, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Frank Reich got fired today. So this offense, this team may look a lot differently. It may give them a jolt of energy. So I will hold off just for now. Another week I want to see without Frank Reich. And I think that you can get away with it, especially for Cortland Sutton here. So again, I appreciate the super chat. RJ Bacani, what's going on? I appreciate the super chat. 9-3 and in first place. Let's go. I congratulate you on that. That is fantastic. Stroud, Monty, Etienne, Lamb, Devonta, McBride, Kirk, Miami DST, and Dustin Hopkins, Mahomes, KW, Charbonnet, Achane, Ferg, OBJ on the bench. What kind of wide receiver can I trade for? Great point. This is a great question right here. So you've got several guys on your roster right now that, like, your wide receiver 1 and 2, they've got upside here. CeeDee Lamb, Devonta Smith, plenty of upside. Now, obviously, your wide receiver 3 is I like Christian Kirk, but he's not exactly a high upside guy. I think he's a very, very good stable option. Best served as a wide receiver 4. Like, that's ideal. And like, he's a wide receiver, back-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. Technically, in fantasy right now, I would prefer to have him as my wide receiver 4. So when I look at your running backs here, you've got upside here as well. Obviously, Monty and Etienne are your showstoppers. You've also got Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet with Achane. So it's like you're kind of in a predicament here because you've got 2 running backs that are injured, KW and Achane. Kenneth Walker, I don't know when he's coming back. I've read that he's got a good shot to play this week. That's positive because they're playing on Thursday night. So they have exactly a week to prepare from when they played San Francisco on Thanksgiving night last week. So that's a good thing. They have, they've got time. But, Kenneth Walker, I think that it's hard to trade him right now, to be honest with you, because I think that you look at this situation and it's like, yes, this guy has upside and he's shown it, but a lot of people have been scared about his playoff schedule, which, by the way, is really not as tough as a lot of people think. And then Devon Achane, I'm not sure. I'm honestly curious to see how much fantasy upside or fantasy value he has right now in the community. Because I know how I feel about him. I know how the audience feels about him for the most part. I really do want to see more people's opinions on Devon Achane. Because I think that this is the type of guy that I would try to package together with someone like Odell Beckham Jr. or Christian Kirk and try to upgrade to a wide receiver in the range of Mike Evans or Jalen Waddle or, someone like Tank Dell. That's the move I would be trying to make here because, like I said, you've got running back depth and you've got 2 showstoppers. Wide receivers are the ones that need the most improvement here. I would try to take Devon Achane because the guy's got promise. I think that might be about what it builds up to. It's just promise at that position. So I would just go ahead and try to package Devon Achane together with someone like preferably Odell Beckham to get a Mike Evans or a Tank Dell type. I understand that may not work. And if it doesn't work, then I would package them together for someone like Christian Kirk and then go for that big upgrade right there. Because I think that ultimately that upgrade at the flex is going to help put you over the top. And again, I appreciate the super chat. Gabriel Polk, 18. What's going on? I appreciate the super chat. 10-team PPR, 9-3 record team. Lamar, Bijan, Kyler, CD, Puka, Mixon, McBride, Ravens, Younghoe Koo, and the bench is Higgins, Flowers, Lockett, Spears, Charbonnet, Keaton Mitchell, Reed, need quarterback and defense. Drop Higgins and Spears. So I've been kind of saying this for weeks on T. Higgins right here. And what my belief is that I would drop T. Higgins. I've been saying this to a lot of people in the audience. It's not that I'm actively saying just drop him just because. Like, I don't think you should just drop him because it's funny. Like, that's not why we're dropping T. Higgins right now. We're dropping T. Higgins because before Joe Burrow went down, T. Higgins couldn't stay healthy himself, and he really wasn't doing that much with Joe Burrow. There's no upside here for 2 wide receivers. You've got room for Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins to me is like, if your trade deadline has not passed, try to trade him away first. Like I said, if you can get some fab out of the deal, or if you can get a guy like, maybe a guy like Josh Downs, I would prefer over him. But, you're needing a quarterback and some defense here. So, Kyler Murray obviously is, I believe, scary to have as your starting quarterback going forward. I think that, dropping T. Higgins is definitely the move I would make. But I don't know who's on your waiver wire. You may have options like Jordan Love and Sam Howell and, maybe someone like, if you're lucky, maybe somebody like Trevor Lawrence. But I don't know who's on your waiver wire. Because if you're looking at guys on the waiver wire like Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett, I'm not endorsing my audience picking up those guys and starting them. If your trade deadline has not passed, we got to make a trade. We got to make a trade. I would take someone together like a Joe Mixon, package them together with like Zay Flowers off a big week, or Tyler Lockett, try to get yourself a Trevor Lawrence type. That's what I would personally do. Now, I get it. Your trade deadline may have passed. You may have to pick up a quarterback. But yes, I endorse dropping T. Higgins for sure. And out of the other options that I'm looking at, I'm looking at a situation here where I'm like, should I drop Tyjae Spears or should I drop Zach Charbonnet? I'm not going to drop Zach Charbonnet though. Yeah, I would drop Tyjae Spears because I think that Tyjae Spears ultimately has shown more upside than Zach Charbonnet. I do think that this Kenneth Walker injury is going to lead as a little bit of a springboard for more opportunities for Zach Charbonnet that Tyjae Spears is actually losing right now to Derrick Henry. So, yeah, I would say those are the two I would drop. But again, if your trade deadline is not passed, I just remember that you have Lamar too. Package Lamar together with one of those options I was saying. Package him together with Joe Mixon. Try to get CJ Stroud. Package him together with, Joe Mixon and try to get yourself a Brock Purdy. I would probably package Kyler and do that with Mixon to get Brock Purdy rather than Lamar. But point being, I would shoot for bigger upside if you've got those kind of guys not available. But that's the move I would try to make here. I think you could drop both T. Higgins and Spears for sure. But depending on who's on your waiver wire, I would try to go for bigger air and try to get a game changer at the quarterback position. And again, I appreciate the super chat. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the night. Just a reminder, top 30 wide receiver rankings video for Week 13 Fantasy Football tomorrow morning. Top 12 Fantasy Football defense rankings for Week 13 Fantasy Football tomorrow afternoon as well. So make sure to stay tuned for those videos, guys. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. Rock out. I'll pause really quick because I see I got a super chat from you. 7-5 now. Team is quarterback Purdy. Running backs are Bijan, Walker, Charbonnet, Javonte, Keaton Mitchell, and wide receivers are St. Brown, Olave, Ayuk, McLaurin, Reed, and tight end Kincaid, Dallas Goedert. Defense is Jets. Defense, any moves. Okay, so for the most part, your team looks really good. There's a lot of elements I like. Now, Bijan Robinson, I think like I said today, I think is a top 5 to 7 option in your fantasy football playoffs. I love Bijan Robinson moving forward. I do have a problem with your running back 2 position, and I think that your receivers are in really good shape. You've got 3 100% must-start guys most of the time, wide receiver with Ayuk, Olave, and St. Brown. So, and you've got Jaden Reed and Terry McLaurin chilling on your bench. How many people think that Terry McLaurin would be a massive help to their team? A lot of people. That's no joke. A lot of people think he would be a massive help to their team. So Terry McLaurin to me is a guy that I would try to package together if your trade deadline has not passed. And if you can get Terry McLaurin, package them together with I would probably try to package them together with a Keaton Mitchell, maybe, and try to upgrade at running back. Try to see if you can get someone like a Ramondre Stevenson. Try to see if you can get someone like a Joe Mixon. Because ultimately, I'm not looking to sell big at the wide receiver position just so you can get an upgraded running back. I think that ultimately what it comes down to is that you're in a situation here where you've got 2 good wide receivers on your bench at all times, at least. Your defense, I do believe, can make an upgrade. I think that the Jets defense, I like them, but there's better defenses for the fantasy playoffs. I would go after a defense like the Broncos. I really would. I think the Broncos are, first of all, on a lot of waiver wires. I think they're a defense that can absolutely be a massive piece for you in the fantasy football playoffs. I think that ultimately you're in a situation where you can have a lot of options at the defensive position on the waiver wire. I think Broncos is a great target to get off of the waiver wire personally. And then I'm also, coming back to this trade idea, I think that ultimately if your trade deadline has not passed, I would try to move Terry McLaurin and try to get myself I would try to get myself, actually screw that idea. Screw that idea. What I would do here personally is I would actually sell off Olave or Ayuk, preferably Olave. I would try to package Olave with a guy like Keaton Mitchell and upgrade bigger at the running back position. Try to go after a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, DeAndre Swift. Try to go after someone like Saquon Barkley off a bad week. Because what I would rather do personally is I would personally rather have someone like Saquon Barkley as my flex option week to week and also as a security blanket for an RB2 rather than, rolling with Ayuk is a guy I really like in fantasy football. I think he's a great playoff option, but I do think that you pair Ayuk with a guy like Saquon Barkley in the flex, that's the move I want to make. I think Olave is good. I don't think he has as much long-term upside as Ayuk does. So I would go with Ayuk. Or I'm sorry, I would try to package together Olave and package him together with Keaton Mitchell, try to upgrade to a guy like Pacheco, a guy like Swift, a guy like Saquon Barkley at that running back position because you've got a healthy Bijan Robinson. You've got a healthy Javonte Williams to roll out there as your running back 1 and 2. You got Kenneth Walker, if he comes back, hopefully. But to put yourself over the top here, I think upgrading from Olave to a guy like one of those running backs I described will do it in the fantasy football playoffs. And again, I appreciate the super chat. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the night. Like I said, top 30 wide receiver rankings tomorrow, top 12 defense rankings tomorrow for week 13 fantasy football, guys. So please, on your way out, go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support, and I will see you guys in tomorrow's videos. Peace out. Y'all have a good rest of your night.